We are on our way to the land of the Fulani, a very large group of people who herd cattle in the Sahel zone of West Africa from Dakar to Lake Chad. This road leads north from Ouagadougou, through the large town of Kaya, where the pavement ends, to Fulani towns in the north of Burkina Faso, especially to Dori and Gorom Gorom. The best way to travel is in a bush taxi, packed into a truck with way too many other travelers. Our guide is Abdoulaye Bamago, who is a member of a Mosi Smith family, who has grown up among the Fulani in the north and speaks Fulfulde fluently. The Fulani people live across West Africa, from Senegal and the Gambia in the west to Lake Chad in the east. They are an important population numerically in Senegal, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad. The Fulani live in the dry savanna areas north of the tropical forest of the Guinea coast, south of the dry Sahara Desert, in a region that is commonly referred to as the Sahel. This region receives enough rainfall in the winter, from July to October, to provide rich green pastures for herds of cattle and to grow crops of millet, sorghum, and corn. The Fulani call themselves Fulbe and speak a language called Fulfulde. In Francophone Africa, they call themselves Pul, and their language is Pular. They are primarily herders of cattle, sheep, and goats, and so they travel throughout the year from season to season, looking for good pastures for their herds. Although the common stereotype is of the nomadic Fulani, there are many Fulani who live in settled villages or even in big cities. Many Fulani are well educated and quite prosperous. Although most nomadic Fulani ride donkeys from campsite to campsite, many city Fulani drive Mercedes sedans or Nissan and Toyota 4x4s. The history of the Fulani may go back in time many thousands of years. There are numerous paintings on the rock walls of the mountains of the Central Sahara that date from 6,000 to 8,000 BCE, and that depict herders of cattle, goats, and horses who strongly resemble the modern Fulani. Many scholars of the Fulani agree that these paintings represent some of the same celebrations and the same way of life that remain important to the Fulani today. There is no evidence at all that these people immigrated into Africa from the Middle East or anywhere else. There is good evidence that they were among the very earliest peoples of what is now a desert, but which was once a vast fertile pasture that stretched from the Atlantic to the Nile River. For centuries, the Fulani in West Africa tried to avoid their neighbors and to stay out of the conflicts that often devastated the Sahel. But in the 19th century, they engaged in holy wars under the leadership of the Caliph Uthman Dan Fodio, who formed the great state of Sokoto in northern Nigeria. Today, the Fulani play a key role in the politics of many West African countries, especially Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Nigeria. The Fulani are very handsome, slim, elegant-looking people who take great pride in personal appearance and who consider themselves the most beautiful people in the world. They are famous in West Africa for their light complexions, narrow noses, and thin lips, all of which they value highly. They take great care to emphasize their beauty through the use of makeup, beautiful hairstyles, jewelry, and dress. Fulani women are often very graceful, elegant, and beautiful, and wear elaborate silver jewelry, especially old European coins, and silver and glass beads. They have a very clear sense of style in clothing, and have their own tailors in the markets who specialize in styles that are very easy to recognize as Fulani or Pul. During the colonial period from 1900 to 1960, many French and English colonial officers took Pul women as temporary wives. In contrast, the women and their families that often resulted in considerable financial benefits for the women when her colonial husband left Africa to return to France or England. Today, Pul hold numerous celebrations such as the Yaki dance, where men and women can show off their charm, talent, and beauty.
Avec plein de colliers au cou. Et ça c'est du maquillage. Et une pièce d'argent, elle a dans sa bouche. Comme elle n'a pas de poche, elle pouvait garder dans sa bouche. Ce qu'elle porte, c'est fait en argent. Ça coûte tellement cher.
The Fulani sense of beauty requires perfect symmetry of face and body, clear white eyes, brilliant white teeth, and light skin. They apply makeup and painted designs to emphasize these features, and constantly clean their teeth with twigs from a particular tree that makes their teeth as white as can be. It is a personal tragedy for a person to be marked or deformed in some way by an accident, and the Fulani go to some lengths to try to conceal any such scars or deformities.
Voilà, vous voyez. Voilà. Donc c'est le miroir. Ce qu'elles utilisent pour confectionner les tenues, parce que ça fait partie de l'habillement, mais aussi on le dit pour autre chose. Elles les utilisent pour se mirer. Là par exemple il y a ce modèle là. Au bout des tresses on met des pièces d'argent. Et il y a ces tresses, les tresses les plus simples que la femme pour l'autre. Et celle-là aussi c'est presque la même chose.
Anyone who visits the Sahel admires the beautiful hairstyles Fulani women wear. There are two basic styles from which others are elaborated. Both basic styles are intended to help women carry burdens on their heads. The most elaborate style is a high crest that runs from the forehead to the nape of the neck, with braids that hang in front of and behind the ears. This produces a large mass of hair that cushions the load the woman carries, with the help of a small pad of cloth. The second major style consists only of braids that hang all around the head, in front of the ears and at the neck, leaving the top of the head free of elaborate braids so the woman can place a thick pad of cotton cloth on top of her head to cushion her burden.
Comme ça, là, souvent elles ne chantent pas en travaillant, elles ne chantent pas.
Wodabi women in southern Niger create large masses of hair that hang over the forehead and leave the top of the head less decorated to be padded with thick cloth when they carry bowls of milk.
Voilà, une vache qui est couchée avec le veau qui est juste arrêté auprès d'elle. Voilà. Mais malheureusement, on ne peut pas extraire du lait sur cette vache parce que c'est une vache qui a faim. Comme ça, sans l'aide de son propriétaire, elle ne peut même pas se lever. Elle est carrément finie, elle n'a plus de force pour gober et puis la maison des poules et Gawabe. Parce qu'il y a Wadabe, Gelgobe et puis Gawabe. Et puis il y a d'autres familles encore. Parce que le peul, c'est quoi? il préfère toujours son eau de marigot ou de puits que lui-même a creusé. Par contre, l'eau des forages modernes ne sont pas aimées ici. Voilà. Donc c'est très rare qu'un peul boive cette eau-là.
The homes of Pul or Fulani nomads are very light and portable, so that they can easily be packed up, loaded onto donkeys, and carried off to new campsites where the pastures are richer and their herds can flourish. The homes are dome-shaped constructions covered with mats. They are built by the women, who begin by digging a circle of small holes in the sand, into which are thrust the ends of flexible poles. These are in turn bent over to form an arch and tied in the middle, with thin, strong arches intersecting from all sides to form a solid but flexible structure that supports a covering of beautiful mats woven of locally available grass. These structures are proof against the wind, and even against light rain, although they may be covered with a plastic tarp in the wettest weather to prevent leaks and to extend the life of the mats. Inside the home, the women construct a broad platform of posts and light beams, over which more mats can be spread to form a bed 2 or 3 feet above the ground. Belongings are stored on shelves off the ground or are hung from the rafters. When it rains hard in the Sahel, sheets of water flow across the sand and clay, and the members of the family, as well as belongings, stay high and dry inside the home.
Voilà, bien décoré avec 2 couleurs différentes. Ça, c'est la couleur naturelle. Voilà, des tiges qu'elles ont utilisées. Voilà, maintenant, ça, c'est la couleur transformée. C'est de la couleur noire. Donc, ça, c'est pour obtenir cette couleur-là. C'est les mêmes tiges que ça. C'est les mêmes tiges comme ça. Mais on met ces tiges-là dans de la boue. Dans la boue, on plonge ça dans la boue pendant plusieurs jours. Et après plusieurs jours, on les enlève, on trouve que c'est transformé en cette couleur noire. Et maintenant, elles les utilisent pour faire des petites parties, des petites taches noires sur la natte. Et voici, ça c'est une autre maison, bien équipée. Vous voyez le lit conjugal, appelé lesso. Avec une natte même dessus.
The constant collecting of milk results in the use of containers for the milk in the form of decorated gourds and enamel bowls. The Fulani make the beautifully decorated gourd bowls themselves, and they buy the imported enamel bowls in local markets. Every Fulani woman brings a collection of gourds and bowls as her dowry when she marries, and these are proudly displayed inside the house or on special celebrations on racks outside the home.
Voici une natte accrochée. Ça veut dire qu'elle a eu le temps vraiment de tisser beaucoup de nattes pendant la deuxième période de l'année passée. Et ça s'appelle kak. On a non hamido. Non bewetena. Oh duma non. Table oh. Oh lesa non. Deg. Ok. Donc ils disent aussi, on l'appelle aussi deg. Voilà. Sur ça, on pose voici, c'est une femme peu riche, vachement riche, hein? Elle a tout de plat. Hein? Donc c'est ça qu'on appelle badji. On l'utilise pour déposer les trucs. Voilà, et comme ça, on dépose la calebasse dessus comme ça. Et ça ne glisse plus. Donc ce que vous voyez là, c'est les feuilles de rognier. Vous voyez? Ça c'est les feuilles de rognier qu'elles ont cueilli. Ça, c'est pour la fabrication des couvertures, des couvercles de calebasse. Les couvercles de calebasse appelés bédou. Voilà, donc vous voyez, et ces bois sont implantés au sol pour soutenir le lit. Donc, ce que vous voyez, c'est qu'elle touche là, c'est ça qu'on appelle somal. C'est un récipient pour contenir de l'eau, mais c'est en pot. C'est le pot de la peau d'une chèvre qu'ils ont récupéré, parce que c'est les bouchers qui font ça. Donc, c'est la peau d'un animal. On enlève la peau comme ça et puis on peut possiblement transformer ça en un récipient qui peut contenir de l'eau. Voilà. Donc comme ça, on est en train de faire connaissance. Il me demande si l'année passée j'étais ici, j'ai dit non. Je ne savais pas que je suis de ce village. Donc vous voyez à l'intérieur aussi de cette maison. Et c'est ça que je dis, ça c'est horde. Vous voyez les traces du lait. Voilà, c'est ça qu'on appelle horde. Voilà. Donc, on l'utilise, on enlève le lait dans la calebasse et on boit. Donc, ce que vous voyez là, ça s'appelle Dioloro. Cela, elle met le lait. Voilà, elle met le lait ici et elle secoue pour obtenir la graisse. Et c'est cette graisse-là, ils utilisent comme pommade, ils utilisent cette graisse comme pour manger, comme huile pour la sauce du taureau, tout ça. Et cette graisse-là ne vient du lait directement. Nous, on l'appelle lait parce qu'on aime aussi, on ne sait pas ce qui est dedans. Mais ce qu'ils mettent, ils ne disent pas que c'est du lait, mais c'est cadam. Ça veut dire du lait caillé. C'est le lait caillé. Ça, c'est un plat traditionnel, c'est en bois. C'est en bois, mais c'est les Gawajo qui l'utilisent pour mettre du thau, la sauce, et puis on bat toute nourriture là-dedans. La fabrication est très difficile parce que c'est un tronc d'arbre, on coupe et puis on le taille et ça c'est un faire des plats. Ça s'appelle là. Donc, on voit bien que il y avait certainement du lait et puis du thau dedans, ça se voit. Ce qui est blanc, ça n'a pas été lavé pour le moment. Et ça arrive que ça se casse. Il y a des forgerons spécialisés qui réparent ça. Voilà, ce que vous voyez, c'est ça qu'on appelle bédou. On l'utilise pour couvrir le lait. Par exemple, on met le lait dans la calebasse et on prend pour couvrir la calebasse. Voilà. Et c'est comme ça. Oh. Donc, cette petite table, on l'appelle un peu le cago. Et c'est sur ça on dépose le lait. Voici déjà la calebasse que vous voyez. Voilà, et les petits trucs quoi. Et dans la calebasse, on peut remarquer qu'il y a une petite calebasse qui est dedans avec du lait. Ah, ça doit être bon. Hein? Voici ça, ce sont des petits veaux. Selon le pelage de tout animal ici a un nom. On les appelle par leur nom. Par exemple, je connais quelques-uns. Par exemple, on dit Nile, ceux qui ont le pelage rouge. Olel, ceux qui ont le pelage jaune. Il y a mâle, il y a single. Tout ça, ce sont des noms qu'on donne aux animaux. Mais selon leur pelage, la couleur de leur poils ou leur peau.
The Fulani raise herds of cattle, goats, and sheep, as well as a few horses and camels. They depend entirely on their cattle for food. They do not slaughter and eat the cattle, but instead live off the milk. Pole women milk their cattle every day and turn some of the milk into yogurt, cheese, and butter. The Pole drink the milk as is or mix it with ground millet to make a sort of porridge.
Donc vous voyez le petit Peul. Il a à peine.
As is true of most of the Sahel, Fulani country receives rain only half the year, from May to late September. From September to May, the sky is bright blue, the sun is hot, and not a drop of moisture falls. The earth turns red and dusty, the leaves wither on the trees, and the cattle search for something green to eat. Pole herders drive their cattle south, closer to the forest, where they can survive off greener grass, and their families follow along, setting up their camps farther and farther south.
Vous voyez les bœufs d'ici ne ressemblent pas, ce n'est pas les mêmes races. Et là, les vaches ont plus de longues cornes plutôt. Les cornes sont plus longues que les bœufs, les vaches du Burkina, puisque ce n'est pas les mêmes races.
When the first rains begin in May, the landscape begins to turn green, and village after village sinks in a sea of green grass and new crops. The Pole herd their cows and sheep farther north, toward the edge of the desert, where vast flat plains of red dust are quickly transformed into broad green pastures. Pole women roll up their mats, load tent poles and belongings on the backs of donkeys, place their young children on top of the load, and move north following the herds.
12 ans. Et le petit, il a à peu près 8 ans. Regarde les gars. Donc les petits veaux, à cet âge, ces petits veaux ne broutent pas l'herbe.
The relationship between the Fulani and their herds is close. The people live almost exclusively from milk, and the herds depend on the herders to find grass and water. Each herder gives each of his cows a name based on the patterns and colors of its hide. They address the cattle formally by name, and are very aware of the health and well-being of each cow. The cattle are never slaughtered for food, but may be sold for profit, and the profit is then invested in better stock. The herders know very well about cattle diseases and may regularly consult expertly trained veterinarians who can inoculate the cattle and treat diseases. In most areas in which Fulani live, the veterinarians are highly respected, often very wealthy, and are usually community leaders. Fulani herders occupy the Sahel zone between the desert and the forest because the cattle are able to find good forage and water there, and are free from fatal diseases such as trypanosomiasis. Sleeping sickness is spread to mammals, both humans and animals, by the bite of the tsetse fly. These flies infest the forest zone in the south, and even brushy areas along rivers in the north. Any domesticated animals that are exposed to the flies for a significant period will sicken and die. The herders are careful to keep their cattle, sheep, goats, and horses north of the areas infested by tsetse flies. When they send their cattle to market, they quickly herd the cows south to the nearest railhead where they can be loaded on trains or on large trucks and shipped to large cities in the south, such as Conakry, Freetown, Abidjan, Accra, Cotonou, and Lagos, for slaughter. Herding livestock is very profitable, and the men who own the herds are often quite wealthy. These wealthy men employ poorer full-bay herders to care for the stock, while the owners often live in villages or cities. The Fulani often come into conflict with local farmers. The convention among scholars has been that the relationship is symbiotic, that the herds leave manure that richens the farmers' fields, and the cattle clean up the trash and stalks left behind after harvest. While this may be true, the fact is that far too often herders allow their cows to field in cultivated fields, causing terrible destruction of crops and causing terrible loss to the farmers. This results in angry confrontations, frequent violence, and even murder. Numerous herders are beaten to death every year by angry farmers, and farmers are shot by frightened herders. In defense, the Fulani carry firearms, even AK-47s, for protection. When a herder is killed, the Fulani file a complaint with the local police, who may round up and jail all the farmers in the region. The herders try to pay off the police to enforce the law in their favor, and because the herders usually have cash, they are able to pay off the police effectively.
Vous voyez, le petit taureau que vous voyez, il a à peu près 3 ans. Donc, 2 ans et demi. Donc, par son pelage, on l'appelle Nord. Vous voyez? Et cette vache aussi. Voilà, c'est un joli taureau. Celui que vous voyez vraiment au milieu de l'écran. La vache qui vient de passer derrière le petit taureau là, avec la couleur, une pelage rouge, on l'appelle Nile par sa couleur. Ça, c'est des femmes poulottes qui reviennent de leur vente de lait.
One of the most common sights in the northern Sahel is a group of beautifully dressed Pole women carrying bowls of fresh or sour milk to the market to be sold. These are the very image of color, grace, and elegance in West Africa.
L'autre porte de l'eau, par contre l'autre porte ramène ses calebasses vides de lait. Vous voyez l'enclos que vous voyez. Dans l'enclos, il y a des petits veaux. Leurs mamans ne sont pas arrivées d'abord, voilà pourquoi on les garde toujours. Et voilà pourquoi la femme poulotte s'apprête à les libérer. Voilà, elle a libéré un veau, elle a pris sa calebasse, vous voyez, elle tient une calebasse. Et vous voyez, voilà.
Milk is the staple of the Pole diet. Women milk their cows each morning and evening. When the cows are let out to pasture, the women fence in the young calves so they cannot accompany their mothers. When the cows return in the evening, the women release one calf at a time. The presence of the calf causes the cow to let down her milk. The Pole woman ties the calf by the neck to the mother's right foreleg while she fills a small gourd bowl with fresh milk. She then releases the calf to finish feeding. All of the milk is gathered in larger bowls and taken to the home, where it can be stored, allowed to sour, drunk, processed into butter, or sold in local markets.
Elle a enlevé tout ce qu'elle a vu. Elle libère le petit veau. Vous entendez ce qu'elle a dit? Que de laisser la vache Soumero venir. Soumero, c'est une vache d'habitude. qu'elle l'appelle, mais là, pour le moment, la vache refuse qu'on s'approche d'elle. Voilà, elle a pu le faire. Donc, on va voir ce qui va se passer. Voilà, elle a attaché. Et vous voyez, en cette période, il y a suffisamment de lait. Donc, elle ne fait qu'enlever un peu sa part seulement et puis elle laisse l'autre partie pour le petit veau qui va téter. Vous voyez, ça c'est une calebasse de lait.
Mothers give their children fresh whole milk to drink. Their husbands get the milk from which the butterfat has been removed.
Celle-là, c'est une femme Peul Gawaj. Donc, elle est en train de taper le lait. C'est du lait caillé, elle met dans ça. C'est ce qu'on appelle du lore. Elle met le lait dedans et elle tape. C'est pour faire sortir la graisse qu'elles utilisent comme pommade pour se pommader, comme huile pour la préparation de la sauce et pour beaucoup de nourriture aussi. Voilà. Tape ça, donc. Donc, elle met le lait dedans et elle secoue.
Pole women make butter by pouring fresh milk into a narrow-necked gourd with a corn cob stopper. They shake the milk for at least an hour, frequently checking to see if butter has begun to form. When the butter begins to appear, they pour the milk into a large wooden bowl, where they use a scoop to form the butter into a thick ball. They can eat the butter, use it on millet porridge, use it as a cosmetic or in their hair, or sell it in the market to northern farming peoples who are lactose tolerant and so can eat dairy products.
C'est une louche qu'elles appellent horde. Donc là, cet instrument là, ça s'appelle lal. Ça c'est pour mettre, pour reverser le lait dedans et cueillir la graisse. Good day. Vous voyez ce qui est jaune au-dessus du lait, c'est la graisse. Donc si elle te pose comme ça pendant quelque temps, Elle peut cueillir avec une petite louche appelée horde. Elle peut recueillir le lait. La graisse plutôt. Goni ka itan. No. Okay.
Kau enggak tahu ya. Anak itu pun. Mana pun yo kau kawan ni nama je no. Ah, on est aminte.
Voilà, vous voyez la graisse maintenant. Donc, elle va essayer de. Donc, elle fait ainsi pour mettre, pour que la graisse, toute la graisse soit ensemble. Voilà, vous voyez.
Suka bengar doi tanya doi am lugar so ler amin dega. Ayo.
Vous voyez la graisse qu'elle a pu cueillir dans ce lait. C'est ça qu'elle a transformé en petites boules. Vous voyez. Voilà. Elle dit que la graisse, elle est prête pour être mangée. Mais si elle ne veut pas la manger tout de suite, elle peut toujours la laisser dans le lait. Ça ne se gâte pas. Comme elle peut mettre ça dans une bouteille aussi si elle veut. Elle a mis juste la natte à côté et puis elle continue son travail.
This woman, named Aminata, specializes in making mats, which she sells to other women to cover their homes. She begins by gathering her materials in the wild and by dyeing some of the strands of grass black or red to be used for decoration. She then lays out a warp of strong cords she has fashioned herself. The warp may be 2 meters wide and as much as 10 meters long. Each warp thread is spaced about 5 centimeters apart. She works in the shade of a light temporary shelter which she can easily move along as her work progresses. Aminata places 2 bundles of 4 strands of grass end to end, starting at the middle of the mat.
Vous voyez, elle tire la paille d'un endroit où elle a bien protégé contre le soleil. Pour que ça ne se sèche pas parce que la paille a été mouillée. Voilà. Cette natte, elle a une longueur de 20 mètres à peu près. C'est utilisé pour la construction des tentes, des maisons peules. Donc vous voyez. C'est le bout de la natte comme ça. Voilà. Ça se fait à plusieurs. Mais pour le moment, elle le fait seule. Parce que ses coépouses ne sont pas à côté. Voilà. Regarde comment se passe le tissage. Elle met les tiges, elle tire sur les fils.
The Fulani are a wonderful example of an African people who do not carve sculpture, but whose arts are nevertheless spectacular. The arts of architecture, mat making, the body, costume, dance, music, and performance are thoroughly integrated into their lives and influence almost everything they do. She forms loops of cord that bind each bundle to one of the warp cords, but she does not tighten the knots until all of the loops have been formed.
Okay, and then the goat like kid the guy in there come to the hood kid. Ubakuna wife palka kaino.
Cette petite partie que vous voyez, ça a été fait ce matin. Voilà pourquoi elle n'a pas coupé les bouts. Vous voyez ici, elle a découpé les bouts pour avoir le même niveau. Voilà, jusqu'au bout de la natte. Voilà. Donc là.
After she has repeated this step to form a half meter of new mat, she trims the ends of the grass bundles, even with a knife.
Elle est en train de faire ça actuellement. Voilà.
She then goes to the middle of the mat and tightens the knots from the center towards the edge. This gives her fingers space to work before the bundles of grass are bound tightly together.
Ça s'est cassé encore. Vous voyez, ces fils c'est elle qui les fait. C'est des fibres qu'elle récupère avec les cultivateurs ici. Donc c'est une petite tige qui a des fibres. Donc elle retire ces fibres. Donc elle utilise ces fibres pour fabriquer les fils. Maintenant, après la fabrication des fils, si elle a vraiment la bonne longueur, ça peut atteindre 400 à 500 mètres. Parce que imaginez obligé de traîner là-dessus pour bien la faire et puis avoir une bonne note. Donc vous voyez, il y a une corde qui s'est cassée. Donc elle est obligée de remettre ça avant de continuer. Elle a pris le bout par droite. Donc vous voyez, cette natte a plus de dessins que la natte précédente parce que c'est la natte d'une femme gawaï. C'est tous des peuls, mais il y a c'est une autre famille aussi. Donc les Gelgob et puis les Gawab, c'est deux familles, mais tous des peuls. Donc vous allez remarquer qu'il y a plus de dessins dans sur cette natte. Des jolis dessins.
Finally, after about a week of work, she rolls the mat up to be taken to market, where she sells each one for about $40.
C'est une natte déjà prête pour l'utilisation.
Oh, but that me hand to them foot you.
Donc nous sommes chez Allah. Voilà. Donc il nous a amené une natte. Oui, cette natte, elle a à peu près la taille d'un mètre carré.
We have been offered this older but very nicely decorated mat to sit on when we come to pay our respects to the family.
Cette natte pour accueillir ces étrangers, pour s'asseoir aussi.
Fulani men and women often visit local markets where they exchange goods with their Fulani, Tuareg, Bella, and Mosi neighbors. People walk to the market, ride in overcrowded trucks, or ride their donkeys and camels 75 kilometers, as this Bella family has done. They have traveled for 3 days to visit the market in Dori to purchase millet for their food. This truck is loaded with passengers about to head south from Goram Goram to Dori. A Fulani mother with her newborn baby. The livestock market in Goram Goram is huge, and hundreds of cattle, sheep, goats, and donkeys exchange hands each day. Most are sold to merchants who ship them south by truck to Ouagadougou or to Accra for slaughter. West African markets are fascinating displays of color, sound, music, smells, dust, herbs, spices, pottery, pots and pans, textiles, tools, and just about anything one needs to live in the Sahel. Anyone for some fresh fish? This beautiful Bella girl is not quite sure what a video camera is and gives us a very suspicious look. The greenstone jewelry near her ear is called zakat and is especially popular among the Bella. Lots and lots of enamel bowls are offered for sale and are avidly collected by Fulani women who depend on them for processing milk. Small merchants may place a mat on the ground and spread out their wares for display, or more prosperous merchants may rent a stall in which they can work and hang the textiles they sew or display their merchandise. Each vendor pays a fee to the tax collector, the fee being large or small depending on the size of the stall. Deep-fried donuts are always fresh and good to eat. Some are made of white flour, others of ground millet or even of beans. Some have sugar, some don't. All of them are delicious. These are the red leaves of the hibiscus flower, which are dried and then steeped in hot water with sugar to make a sweet tea called bisaps.
Chaque année, comme cette année, il n'y a pas eu ici de la pluie, ils vont bouger jusqu'à sur la frontière du Mali ou du Niger.
These are Tuareg mats and leather goods, which the local tourist art merchant offers for sale in his shop.
Ça, c'est pour un couple, un jeune couple. Ils viennent de se marier pas longtemps.
He also offers silver jewelry, stone carvings, leather work, old and worn bits of Tuareg and Fulani furniture, weapons, and anything else he has found tourists like to buy.
Ils le mettront dedans.
Donc c'est un sac qui peut contenir tout ce qu'on paye au marché.
Au marché.
Most of the locally manufactured objects are of high quality and are good buys. When I first visited Gorom Gorom 30 years ago, there were no tourists and no tourist shops. Now the village is very popular with French, German, American, Dutch, and English tourists, and there is an American Peace Corps volunteer stationed there to help keep track of quality of production and sales, and to help merchants fill orders by mail.
Le secret de Tuareg.
Secret de Tuareg.
In the back of his shop, he stores numerous wood carvings from people all over West Africa, which he tries to sell as sacred, old, valuable, museum-quality ceremonial objects.
Pour décorer la maison.
Occasionally, he even succeeds in selling one.
Ça, tout ça, c'est pour la décoration?
Okay. The Fulani are Muslim, mostly. That is, the Fulani who live in towns and cities are devoted and fervent Muslims who pray every day and go to mosque on Friday. They are the descendants of the warriors of the Caliph Uthman Dan Fodio and the other great Muslim leaders of the 19th century. The town Fulani have big mosques available to them, and they support their mosques financially. They are wealthy enough to be able to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, sometimes more than once in their lifetime. In contrast, the Fulani who are herders, who follow the herds constantly throughout the year, who lead a nomadic life and call themselves Fulbe, or cattle Fulani, are nominally Muslim. They identify themselves as Muslims, and they often pray, but they are less often devoted, and few of them are able to travel to Mecca, or even to attend a mosque on Friday. To the left are the remnants of the old mosque, and to the right the new mosque. The origins of the Fulani are far older than Islam, and scholars tend to agree that centuries ago the Fulani followed African religious traditions. But many converted to Islam in the centuries following the conquest of North Africa by the Arabs in the 8th and 9th centuries. This is the Friday Mosque in Dori, filmed on a Friday afternoon as thousands of faithful Muslim Fulani, Jula, Mosi, and other peoples make their way to prayers. Men and women pray in separate parts of the mosque, and many do not arrive in time to pray inside, and so pray in the great plaza outside. Hear the call to prayer. Allahu Akbar. God is great.
C'est la prière du vendredi. La grande mosquée de Dori. Montre-moi, Midao. Aïe. Ah, donc, comme vous le remarquez, c'est Habgol Bangal.
A young man named Alai has come to the home of Amidou on the left to ask for his daughter Aminata in marriage. Everyone involved are members of the Guelgobe clan of the Fulani. The young man and the father have agreed on the sum of 50,000 CFA, or about $100, and a healthy young cow to seal the marriage contract. This is not a payment for the bride. Women are not bought and sold. It is rather a sum that guarantees that the marriage has been agreed to, that all parties are satisfied, that the young woman will be a suitable wife, and the young man a suitable husband. The cow does not belong to the father of the bride, but to the young woman herself, and will form the core of a new herd that will be her property, and will provide food and income for her and her children as the years pass and the family increases. Alai comes to the home of his bride with the support and encouragement of all of his male friends, who are seated behind him.
Good day, Asila may Allah, hey? Le kamgal gine gifu wala be nini na haba wana non aha dume he dume
kapitan ked uyna e sappo e nyalo
uyna e sappo e nyalo donc pour demander la main d'une fille surtout dans la famille des Guelgobe, c'est 50 000 francs CFA plus une vache qui n'a jamais accouché. Ça veut dire un jeune bœuf. Maintenant, dès que tu te sens vraiment prêt, tu réunis tout cela, et les 50 000 francs CFA plus le bœuf que tu amènes. Et ce bœuf, comme on le dit, ce bœuf, la femme, après le mariage, va ramener ce bœuf-là chez son mari. Donc, et ce bœuf c'est ça qui va démarrer le troupeau et qui va préparer l'héritage de ses enfants. Parce que c'est avec ce bœuf va normalement reproduire et puis donner plus d'enfants. Et c'est ainsi que ça se passe. Donc tout ça se fait à la présence d'un marabout. Donc c'est le marabout qui doit assister à cette cérémonie et puis bénir la liaison, ce qui est le mariage entre...
All of the negotiations are carried out in the presence of a holy man, or marabout, who is named Musa, and who is the most important Pole holy man in Burkina Faso. He is responsible for performing all of the official Fulani marriages held in the town hall in Ouagadougou. He makes sure the negotiations go smoothly, and then he blesses the marriage. Because Alai and Amidou have already reached an agreement, there is little for the holy man to do but to give his blessing.
Donc ici, le marabout a demandé au papa qu'est-ce qu'il a proposé pour le mariage. Il dit non, ils sont tombés d'accord pour 50 000 francs CFA plus la vache. Donc il dit que il n'y a plus rien à dire. Ce qu'il reste à faire, c'est donner lui sa bénédiction et reménage. Donc c'est la bénédiction maintenant. Voilà, donc la bénédiction est faite. Maintenant, le papa a donné son accord pour le mariage. Il faut aller maintenant célébrer le mariage. Et le mariage est célébré. C'est le travail des hommes, c'est juste ce qui s'est passé maintenant. C'est ça seulement le travail des hommes dans le mariage. Ce qui reste à faire, c'est les femmes qui font ça. C'est les femmes qui font les nourritures pour partager aux gens. C'est les femmes qui font la musique durant le mariage.
The groom will give 30,000 CFA today, and the remaining 20,000 when he comes to take his bride to her new home. He is warned not to delay, because until the final sum is paid to the father, any man who is acceptable can, in theory, come and make a suitable payment and take the young woman away. He agrees he will not procrastinate.
Donc dans 5 jours, il va venir retirer sa femme. Et là, il viendra avec le reste de la somme. Dès qu'il finit de faire la préparation, il donne le thé à tout un chacun. Ate do perena. Hoko ate kabal galfa mi heba mi nyo.
Anjala ate kabal jun. De andusa na yo yo.
Donc c'est le mari qui goûte le premier. Celui qui danse, c'est le jeune marié.
The official part of the ceremony is followed by good food and music and dancing, provided by the women of the family. The women play drums made of gourds turned downward in a basin of water, an instrument the Fulani have played for 8,000 years. All of this takes place at night when it is cool and all the animals are safe at home.
Les chansons que vous avez entendues, c'est des chansons de mariage. fait des louanges de bénédiction aux jeunes mariés. Par exemple, la dernière chanson, ça parle de la nourriture que nous allons manger lors de la fête, lors de la cérémonie de mariage. Donc là, la chanteuse parle de la nourriture qu'elle vient de manger. Elle est satisfaite de la bonne cuisine que la nouvelle mariée a fait. Donc cette chèvre que vous voyez, c'est la chèvre qu'on a payée pour la cérémonie. Et là, ils ont refusé d'égorger la chèvre à la présence de la caméra.
lawɗo ante hey ille ɓagaɗo ɓerde ɗum woni jarde mbaylite way lawɗo mayde law
In December 2005, my wife and I spent some time in the town of Dori, in northern Burkina Faso, where we attended the annual meeting of the Association de Promotion de l'Élevage dans le Sahara et le Sahel. All of the other attendees were Fulani, most of them very affluent, who had driven to the conference from all over West Africa. There was musical entertainment every evening, and one of the most talented groups was the Fulani group named Fantogo, organized by a Fulani musician from Dori named Yero. Early one evening, we all went out to the east side of town, where the musicians performed several songs and dances for us that tell stories of beautiful Fulani cattle, rich green pastures, young Fulani men and women in love, and the regrettable results of making poor choices in the name of romance. We have been visiting the Goabe and Djelgobe Fulani, who live in northern Burkina Faso. Next, we drive east across sand dunes to the Niger and cross the great river at Tillabéri, then drive 2,000 kilometers south to Niamey, the capital of Niger, east to Maradi and Zander, and 120 kilometers north on the road to Agadez to the tiny village of Abdou Nazen, nestled among ancient sand dunes. Several clans of the Wodabi Fulani gathered here in November 2007 to celebrate a good year for their herds, with lots of rain and green grass, and to hold a competition called the Gerwal. There were no guests at the Gerwal in Abdou Nazen. The Wodabi are shy and prefer to hold their celebrations far from tourist centers. Professional dance groups now stage false Gerwals for tourists in Niamey and Agadez, which are filmed for national television. But deep in the sand dunes of the southern Sahara, these creative people celebrate the richness of their culture, far from the eyes of tourists. The Wodabi live scattered all across southern Niger and part of northern Nigeria. Their name means people of the taboo, because of the complex patterns of avoidance they observe, especially about women who are menstruating. They are herders of cattle, goats, and camels, like other Fulani, but they've become very famous in the past 3 decades because of their spectacular culture. Several books and films have been created about these performances, none of which are readily available to the public. The first dance is called the Rume, the dance of welcome. Men paint their faces yellow with clay and butter and wear colorful costumes. They dance and sing to welcome all the clans to the celebration. Early in the morning of the first day of the Gerwal, the young men paint their faces red and put on elaborate costumes of white beads, cloth, and ostrich plumes. The man you see applying his makeup is named Omar. He is 36 years old and has won 5 Gerwals. They dance in groups of their own clansmen all day long, in competition with the men of other clans. Their songs are about love. They are supervised by senior men and encouraged by the oldest women at the gathering. Their dress emphasizes their slenderness, grace, and handsomeness, and their gestures and facial expressions emphasize their charm or sex appeal. The facial expressions are very difficult and tiring. The dance is long and exhausting, and only the most fit and most handsome dare compete. Many Wodabi men compare it to war.
Il a charmé toutes les deux ont le droit de choisir, de le choisir. Les 2 filles peuvent le choisir comme le plus beau.
The competition is judged by the most beautiful young women of the opposite clan. Their choice is based on the men's grace, slenderness, symmetry, fine facial features, white teeth, and large white eyes. Each young woman approaches slowly, with her face averted and partially hidden by her left hand.
Donc c'est le moment de vraiment prouver ton charme. comment ils se bousculent. Donc, le vieux les repousse, que non, que c'est pas comme ça, il faut se faire choisir. Il faut charmer la jeune fille au lieu de la bousculer.
Although the young women feel honored to be selected as judges, they are intimidated by the violence of the men's performance and step back in fear. There is the strong smell of testosterone in the air. She swings her right arm toward the competitors and suddenly, in an almost furtive gesture, points to the man she judges to be the most handsome. The winner brings great honor to himself and his clan, and his name will be remembered for years. Although some writers claim that the women judges and winners meet after the competition and spend the night together in the wilderness, this is an exaggeration of the promiscuity of the Wodade. Although it does happen occasionally, it is fairly rare. Fulani have lived in the Sahara and the Sahel for at least 8,000 years, and although their arts seem ephemeral, fragile, transitory, and we can only record them with cameras and video, they are very durable people, and there is no evidence that their rich culture will disappear soon. As global culture intrudes and tourists attend more and more performances in distant cities, the Fulani retreat into the quiet of their wilderness pastures, and they continue to dance for beauty and love, as they have for millennia.